bottom, 5 lines from the bottom. Gufa, we said before. Ari Yosef Rabbi Chanina. Kol kiyur she'en bo kedei lekadesh arba kohanim imanu, a basin that the kohanim used for washing, that it does not have enough water for 4 kohanim to wash with it. And mikach shabo, that's not doesn't work. You can't use, no one can use it for washing. Shanamar Barachatu Mimenu Moshe v'Aaron Ivanav, because when it talks about the basin, it says Moshe, Aaron, and his sons will wash from it. So Moshe is one person, Aaron is the second person, Banav is minimum, is plural, so it's 2, so that makes 4. Meisve, so they asked, Kol Kelim Kachim, Bain Sheyesh Ben Revis, Bain Shem Ben Revis, any kli, any vessel can be used for washing, whether or not it contains a revis. In other words, there doesn't appear to be a minimum. As long as it's a sanctified vessel, sanctified basin. Okay, so this brisa implies that there is no minimum size. Amar Vada Baracha, B'kodeach b'socho. What are we talking about? You've drilled a hole in the kiyar and you put this small vessel into it. And that's what you use for washing. So you have this sanctified kior, which is big enough, and then so the kior itself has to be big enough to hold for people's washing, but the actual water in it can be less than a revis. In other words, it's got this cup within a bowl kind of thing, and the cup can be a minimal amount of water as long as the bowl is big enough to hold a large amount of water.
Now, we're saying there are 4 faucets, 4 spigots, or not?
No, no.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
No, it's just the volume of water that you need is what we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
How big does the basin have to be?
But the 4 people wash simultaneously?
No. There has to be enough water for 4 people to wash from it. It could be one after another, but it has to be big enough to hold enough water for 4 people. Doesn't mean there has to be enough water for 4 people. The size of the basin has to be big enough for 4 people. And what we're saying is that the actual, amount of water in there doesn't have to be that much, but the size of the basin has to be a certain size.
And it could be larger. It could be larger for 8 people, right?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so the Gemara asks about this, but wait a minute. So what are you talking about? A cup within a basin? It says you should wash from the kiyar, so that implies that you can't have a smaller vessel inside. It has to be from the basin itself that the water comes from. So Gemara says yirchatzu l'rabos klei sharis, because it also has an extra word yirchatzu mimenu. They should wash from it, so that includes any klisharis, right? Ihache, if so, klichol name. So, like if it says yirchatzu, meaning any vessel, where do you get it has to be a sanctified vessel, right? If you're going to include by saying that however you wash, it's fine. So where do you get the idea of a sanctified vessel? So where do you get that rule from? Amrabai klichol lo matzisaros. No, you can't say that. Bikal v'chomer mikano. How do I know to exclude a non-sanctified vessel? Yeah, you can use any vessel, but as long as it's sanctified. How do I know it be as long as it's sanctified? Kal v'chomer mikano. So the basin had a base, a pedestal, let's say. Now, the pedestal has to be sanctified by anointing with oil along with the basin itself. But Eno Makadish, so even the pedestal has to be a klisharis, right? Even though it doesn't hold any water, right? It's not actually used. It's only used as a supporting column for the basin, right? So klichol she'eno nimshachimo, but so certainly a non-sanctified basin, and certainly you can't use that. Okay, so in other words, like obviously things that are used in the mikdash have to be sanctified. And where do you get that rule from? That the pedestal actually has to be anointed, has to be kodesh. Tanya. You might think that the pedestal itself can that somehow you could maybe there's like a little hollow out top of the pedestal. Maybe you could use that for the water for washing. So v'yasisa Torah says make the basin of copper and the pedestal of copper. So how are they the same? They both have to be made of copper, but not for anything else. Like the only similarity between the basin and the pedestal is that they both have to be made out of copper, but not that they can both sanctify. So since obviously then only the basin can hold the water for washing, and not the pedestal. So too, obviously, a non-sanctified vessel can also not be used, or kal v'chomer, a non-sanctified vessel cannot be used to hold the water for washing. Amalei Marzutra bred Rav Mari Ravina. So Marzutra asked, Malakon she'ein asu letocho. Well, maybe you can't make that distinction because you know why you know why you can only use the basin and not the pedestal for washing, because the pedestal is not made to be a vessel, right? It's made to be a stand. It's not made to be a vessel, so that's why you can't use it. But maybe really a klichol, a non-sanctified basin, maybe could be used. No, we're going to use another word. They should wash from it. So the extra word from it means from a sanctified vessel and not from a non-sanctified vessel. Okay, so now everything's still in order. Okay, well wait, so you're going to say mimanu means only sanctified vessel. So any other no, so I'm sorry. You're going to say mimanu from it, only from the basin. So does that mean from some other sanctified vessel you cannot wash? But that's apparently not the case. So Gemara says Harabi Rachmana Yirchatzu. There's another extra word. Rachatzu Moshe right? So again, it uses the word they shall wash. So by saying wash again, it's including yeah. So 1 second. Another inclusive word that will include even if you wash from another sanctified vessel that's not the kiyar, it still works. Umari. So now you've got two choices of what to include. You can include chol vessels, non-sanctified, or you can include other sanctified vessels. So how do you choose? Zaton Meshicha Kamo, Zaton Meshicha Kamo, because which one is more like the kiyar itself? The sanctified vessel, because it needs to be sanctified with by anointing it with oil. So that's the one that will include, and not the clay chol, which it does not even have sanctification. Makes sense. New rule. Whatever kind of liquid that can, let's say, mikvah has a minimum volume of 40 saw of water. Okay. What if you have just a spoonful less of 40 saw of water? You need to fill up the mikvah. So whatever liquid can complete can fill in the mikvah to 40 saw. Mashlim lamei kiyar. It can also the same the same liquid can be used to fill the kiyar. So maybe what I said before was incorrect according to the statement. So maybe you do need a minimum amount of water in the kiyar before you can wash from it. The four-person rule. Because it sounds like here, like you have to have that minimum amount of water. So whatever liquid can fill the last bit of a mikvah is also good for filling the last bit of the kiyar. The mutemai. So what kind of stuff are we talking about? What does not work for filling up the mikvah or the kiyar? If you mean like muddy, mud that's not solid, but it's kind of flowing, right? It's kind of a liquidy mud. How liquidy is it? If it can be drunk by a cow, right? Cow can put his head down and drink from it. I feel a reason. So that even can, that's certainly liquid. It can even contribute to the revis, not even the 40 saw. So and moreover, like you can use it, it's definitely liquid. Um, V ain't partial menu, and if it's too thick, too viscous for a cow to drink from it, I feel a mikvah nami and mashlim. That doesn't even work for a mikvah, right? That's not considered liquid. Ella, so what does it mean? Lemute of chushin adumim. It means like maybe it means like these red bugs. Okay, there's like some kind of slimy bugs that are you put them all together and they're kind of liquidy. So is that what it means that you can use these bugs to fill a mikvah? Afilu beinayim name. But yeah, obviously you can because if you had a whole 40 saw of these red bugs, apparently you could that would count for a mikvah too. So don't, it's no chiddush to tell me, yeah, and you can use them to fill a mikvah. They can themselves be a mikvah. Dahatanya, we have a brayso. Rishon Gimel Omer, Kol Shechilas Riyaso Min Hamayim. Why are they good? Because anything that is hatched from the water, that is, develops in the water, matbilin bo, that's like water, and you can do tefillin matbilin be'eno shel dag. For example, if you have imagine a whale with a huge eye, okay, washes up on shore, and the eye is so big that there's like 40 saw of whatever eyes are made of, whatever viscous, liquidy stuff is in there. It's such a big eye, you could just jump into the eye, and that's a good mikvah. Why? Because it is something that was born in the water, right? So the same with the little bugs, the water bugs. So we can't be talking about that, right? Because no chiddush, because that, of course, you can fill a mikvah with that because that could be the whole mikvah, right? So what are we talking about when we say anything that you could top up a mikvah with? What kind of stuff are we talking about? Amrav Papa, Lamute nasan sa v'natal sa. What we're talking about is when you put you have a full mikvah and that 40 saw and you add something to it, let's say a liquid that is not kosher for mikvah, like fruit juice. Okay, you can't have a mikvah made of fruit juice. So you've got 40 saw of water. You add a saw of orange juice, and then you take out a saw of the mixture, right? Um, so that is considered okay. It's not because we have Mishnah. Mikvah sheish bam arba'im sa mechuvanos. You have a mikvah that's exactly 40 saw. Nasan sa v'natal sa, and you add a saw of some other liquid, not water, and then you take out the saw, which is what we're talking about. Harei kasha. This is fine. Remember the Bar Shelam or Asiyam or Yochanan. Review said adruba. Like this is okay until you end up with like more than 50% fruit juice. Okay, then it's not kosher anymore. But until then, like once you put the juice into the mikvah, into the water, it subsumed to the water, so the whole thing is now considered water. So when you remove a saw, it's still you're moving a saw of water from 41 saw, and you still have 40 saw of water. Okay, Amrav Papa. Okay, so in other words, and the same thing applies to the kior that if you have the minimum of four persons washing water and you add juice to it, and then you take out, you got a cup of juice and you take out a cup of the mixture, that's still kosher, same like a mikvah.
But didn't we make a distinction between the the water that would be sufficient for a mikvah to fill the kior versus the water that's sufficient to wash the hands? Then there was a statement in the Gemara about that, right? And that was a little confusing.
I'm
Where
not sure.
call a mashlim lemei mikvah, a mashlim lemei kior. That's for the water of the kior, but the verviyat, that's the washing of the hand, ain't no mashlim. So well, that distinction that is not entirely clear to me yet. Because okay, that water mikvah, that's to fill up the kior, but that's not water you use to wash the hands, right? If it says when it says that means that you need the quarter log, the revi'at, to wash the hands, separate from the water that would be in the kior, right?
No, I don't think that's what it meant. I think it meant that like we're trying to determine what is this kind of halfway liquid thing that we're talking about. So we ended up saying, no, we're not talking about halfway liquid. We're talking about when you pour in invalid liquid and then take some out. So then it's still considered kosher. But at the beginning, we were trying to identify what is this stuff that is good enough to top off the mikvah, but is not good enough to be a mikvah. right? And one suggestion was maybe it's like mud, and the Gemara said no, because if it's mud that's watery enough, then you could even use that like to wash your hands with the revis to wash with it, right? Like it's fully qualified as water. That's what it was saying by a feel revis comment.
I don't know. Rashi is saying there for mashlim to make your l'shiur dalit kohanim. That would fulfill when it's the mashlim the kior. That's the quantity for the kohanim. But then it says l'reviat shel netil yadayim eno mashlim, the washing of the hands.
Right. So it either means that each Kohen needs a revis to wash with, and so make here that would be for revis, or it could be just talking about in general, washing your hands requires a revis. I'm not sure what Rashi means, but what he's
Well,
saying,
well, it's not. I'm trying to make this distinction that the water we would put in there would be that's sufficient for for this concept of water in the kior, but
Mhm.
but there's a distinct make. He seems to make, I don't know, the way I'm seeing this, and that's why I'm having difficulty. Makes it. I would think if there's enough water in there, there's enough water to wash the hands too. But he makes a distinction saying the revi'at that's not enough for the water, or it's not the type of water, it's not to wash the hands that would from the water in the kior. I'm trying to sort this out, and I'm having not quite understanding what the
Okay, so let me
Gemara
try
and
again.
Rashi.
So let me try again. What we're trying to understand is we had a statement from Reish Lakish, any liquid that you can top off a mikveh with, um, uh, is not good enough for the revis. So now I'm thinking it's maybe we're talking about like the revis in general. Let's see
Well,
what.
he's Rashi says shel natil yadayim.
Yeah, right. Revis in general for washing. I mean, 1 second.
I don't know about in general, but here he says specifically natil
Yeah,
yadayim.
yeah, but I mean the Netilas Yadayim in general, not necessarily the in the Mikdash.
Oh, okay. Well,
Okay, so Reish Lakish made a distinction between topping off the kior and the revis for washing, right? So the suggestion that well maybe we're talking about watery mud, the answer is no. There's no distinction there because if it's watery enough for the kior, it's watery enough for the revis for washing, and if it's not, then it's not. Like there is no halfway point where it's watery enough for the kior, but not watery enough for washing. It's the same measure. It's the same criterion. How
well,
watery it is.
with a type of water, okay, I understand all of that. I don't have a problem with.
Mhm. Okay.
But he's making, yeah, whether it's mud and whether it's chicken feed or whatever, or from the ants or from the that doesn't matter. Water, it's liquid. But what he's making, but he seems to say that water can fill up the kior, and what would fill up a mikvah, it's okay for the kior. But then he says, but to wash the hands, that water does something doesn't qualify. It's not the same. That's that point that I'm having difficulty with.
Okay. So what we end up saying is that that this replacing some of the water with juice works for a mikvah, but not for a revis. Not for revis for washing the hands.
Oh. So that's what we're saying. So it doesn't that way. If we have water, if it's good for the mikvah, but not, we can't use that water to wash the hands.
Right.
But isn't the water that's in this kior used to wash the hands?
Yes.
So why would it not be kasher to wash the hands? So if you can fill up the mikvah,
Well, now we're
then
not talking. Okay, with Reish Lakish, um, Reish Lakish is saying that this in the way we finally understand this is that Reish Lakish is saying this replacement idea that you can take some, add some in and take some out works for the mikvah, works for the kior, right, for how much water you need, but does not work for revis. If you add a spoonful of juice to revis and you remove for washing, and you remove a spoonful of the mixture, then that is not considered water for washing, as strange as that may sound.
But but this
Has to be all
kior,
water.
but this kior provides the water for washing, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, we're talking about washing in any other context, like,
Oh, any type of washing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But but would it work in the mikdash here? The bit of mikdash, whereas he's using this water, the kior, and he's replacing some of it with juice or red bugs
Oh,
or mud.
so, well, it doesn't come up because in the mix in the kior, you need to have a larger quantity of water to begin with, right?
Right,
You need four coniums, four, let's say it's a revi. So you need four revios or a
right.
full log, if you will. Um, so the replacement thing works for a full log, but not for a single revis.
Oh, so if it's a full load, enough for everybody,
Yeah,
four
and that's what you
people.
have to have in the mikdash, right? So there is no single revis scenario in the kior because the kior has to have more than a revis, it has to have four revis to begin with.
Oh, so that would work there, but for a single person, a single revi'ah,
Yes, yes,
that's
yes.
what you had, then it wouldn't work.
Right. Exactly.
So let's say three people wash themselves with all that mixture. The last person, he
Oh,
would
and
be
then the
out of
last
luck.
one. Uh-huh.
He would be out of luck
Um,
then.
you know what? I would think that once the first person removes enough water to wash their hands, then you have to refill it. I would think. Right now, there's only three revies left in there, and only enough for three people to wash their hands is not enough. You have to refill it so that there has to be an abundance of water before a Kohen can wash their hands from the kior.
Oh, so anytime they subtract some of the water, there has to
That's
be
what it
enough.
sounds
So
like.
there has to be enough so the four people could wash,
That's what it
theoretically.
sounds. Yeah, I think that's what it's saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems. Okay. Another thing about the kior. May mikvah ksherim l'mei kior. If you have mikvah water, you can use that for kior water. Um, so l'meimra delo mayim chaim nihu. So one second. So once you take water out of the mikveh, it's not mayim chaim anymore, right? It's drawn water. It's not I'm going to use rainwater as the paradigm of mikveh water, right? It's not rain. It's not directly fed from the heavens anymore. It's drawn water. So are you saying you don't need mayim chaim for the kiyar? Tanya, but mayim lo biyayin. Uh, uh, you have to you should the kohanim have to wash with water. It has to be water, but not, for example, not wine. Mayim v'lo b'mazid, and water, but not diluted wine. But mayim l'rabos shar mayim, and mayim could be any water. It doesn't have to be mayim chayim. V'kamachomer lo mei kiyar. And certainly the water in the kiyar can be used for that. So clearly, the kiyar doesn't have to be mayim chayim. So what are you telling me that the mikvah water can be then used, can be taken out of the mikvah and put in the kiyar? Of course, it's water, right? So what's the chiddush? So Gemara says, "My kal v'chomer l'mei kiyar," and what does it mean? Kal v'chomer for the kiyar, lav d'mayim chaim ninu. Doesn't that mean doesn't that imply that, like, you can't use this water, this diluted water, let's say wine or whatever, you can't use that for the kior. Um, one second. Oh, so the mayim that were um, it's not the mime of the cure. It's mime that you wash the carbon with, right? Um, before you put an ola on the mizbech, you have to rinse it with water. So that's the water time. It has to be really water. And then the Bryce is saying in kal v'chomer, the kior water also has to be pure water, but it can be drawn, right? So what's the kal v'chomer? Lav d'mayim chaim. It doesn't mean that kal v'chomer, that the kior has to be mayim chaim. Lo, the Kaddish doesn't mean that Kal V'chomer has to be Ma'im. I mean, Kal V'chomer, the Kiyar has to be sanctified. Ukedushe Mal Yusahi. Um, but does the water, sanctifying the water, does that really help? V'hatana Rabbi Shmuel, Maim she'ein lahem shem levai. Water means like water. You can't have any adjective about the water. Water has to be, let's say, pure water, not adulterated water, not sanctified water, not I don't know, Yatsume Kior, but that excludes the Kior water. Sheyesh lahem shem levai. It can have a an adjective about it. So
What's the
so
point? It's just getting confusing here with this water, that
yeah,
water.
yeah.
Well, what water can we use then? We can't. It has to be. It's like non-mikvah water, or it's any water. Or
Well, we're trying to get to that point. Okay, so hold that thought for a minute. Maybe it'll become clearer. So what we're saying so far is may mikvah ksheri may kiyar. That's the statement that mikvah water can be used for a kiyar. So we're saying. So then we ask, does that mean it can be not that the kiyar water can be not mayim chaim? But don't we have a kal v'chomer from the water that used to wash an olah has to be has to be um, can be plain water. So kal v'chomer the kior can be plain water, right? Drawn water. The Gemara says no, that's not what it means. It means the water for an olah to rinse an olah has to be sanctified water. Kal v'chomer that the kior water has to be sanctified water, and it's okay for it to be sanctified water because we have a brisa that says that water with an adjective is okay for the mekior. Just making sure why. A lot of the ru'uyin l'mekiar. So the brisa didn't mean um, the yeah. So it means that um, the brisa that's talking about the ola water, the rinsing of the ola water, is talking about water that is can be used for the cure, alma mayim chaim, which is mayim chaim, fresh water, right? So doesn't that isn't that against the original statement of Reish Lakish that make share may mikvah sharing will make cure? If you're understanding may mikvah as mayim chaim and that he's saying that it has to be Mayim Chaim. Well, what about the Ola, which doesn't have to be Mayim Chaim? And we're saying that, implying that the Kior water also doesn't have to be Mayim Chaim. Does it or doesn't it? Gemara says Tanai. Yeah, in fact, it's Machakas Tanaim. Diamar Rabbi Yochanan, Make Kior. Rabbi Yochanan said about the Make Kior. Rabbi Shmuel Omer Meimayan. Rabbi Shmuel says that they have to be from a spring, right? It has to be Mayim Chaim. Chachamim Sharmemo saying the Chachamim say no, it could be any kind of water, drawn water. Okay, so indeed, these two brisas, Reish Lakish says that may make that you can use drawn water, and the brisa says no, it has to be just like the Ola water, which has to be Mayim Chaim.
which is mayim for that is used in a mikvah, right?
Right, that's correct. That's correct. Okay, that's it for the Kior. Ariel. Now, we
So we
have
don't know the answer to that then.
well, no, it's machlokas, right? Those are
Right.
two views. We don't have a conclusion. Correct. Um, okay, so RL, we said what I can't even know what we're disqualifying an RL from, an uncircumcised person, even if he's Jewish. What did we say about what did our Mishnah say about that? Somebody remind me.
That he cannot do the avoda, right?
Oh, right. It was the first mission in Paris. It was the disqualifications for the avoda. So an RL, an uncircumcised person, can does the avoda, it's not valid.
Would
You
that
know,
apply to people who are not allowed to be nimor?
yes, right. In other words, for health reasons or whatever.
Right. That maybe the two previous brothers died, whatever the issue.
Right. Still can't. So he's not supposed. He's supposed to remain an RL, but the avoda is not. If he does the avoda, it's not valid. Minalan, where does this come from? Amar of Chisda. Davar zemi Torah Moshe Rabbeinu lo lamadu. This isn't in the Torah. Midivrei Yecheskel ben Buzi lamadu. It was from the Navi, from Yecheskel. Says in Yecheskel, Kol ben nechar arel lev yarel basar loyavo mikdashi l'sharseni. Any stranger, ben nechar is a stranger, and defines that as arel lev, an uncircumcised heart, which is a philosophical concept, right? There's not a physical concept. It's an idea that he's not subjecting himself to God's will, or he's physically uncircumcised. He can't do the avodah. Uminal and the machali avoda. Okay, so there's an isur. Like you're not supposed to do it, but if he did it anyway, how do you know that? As our Mishnah says, that the avoda is invalid. Tichsiv b'haviachem b'nei nechar or leilev yarle basar lios b'mikdashi l'chalulo is basi. Yecheskel criticizes those who bring uncircumcised people, whether it's uncircumcised heart or physically uncircumcised, when you bring them into my temple, into my mikdash, to l'chalel is basi, which l'chalel means to invalidate the avodah, right? To desecrate the avodah. So that indicates that even that if you went ahead and did it, it desecrates the avodah. In other words, the avodah is not valid. Tanarav, Rabbi Stat ben Nechar. Yachal ben Nechar mamish. Maybe it's only a non-Jew, right? Maybe an uncircumcised Jew is okay, because maybe ben Nechar means just non-Jews are not allowed to do the avodah. Talmud Lomar, Arel Lev. An uncircumcised heart is a disqualification. So that's not whether you're Jewish or not. That's whether you're subject yourself to the will of God or not. So it has nothing to do with being Jewish or not. It has to do with being what the Navi calls Arel Lev. Im came out ben Nechar. So why does it say use the term ben Nechar, which means a stranger? It usually means not Jew. It doesn't mean a non-Jew. It means someone who has estranged himself from God. Arel Lev. So that might only apply to the Arel Lev, to the philosophically uncircumcised. Arel basar minayin. Talmud lomar arel basar. How do I know that a physically uncircumcised person who may be perfectly from, how do you know that he can't do the avodah either? Because it says arel basar. It also disqualifies a person who's physically uncircumcised.
You use the term mal et levavcha in slichot near Rosh Hashanah that one should circumcise one's heart to be open to open to God at the time. That's part of slichot.
Exactly right. Yeah, good point. The ikasara, you need both. The ikasara arel basar only referred to physical circumcision, mishum demayis. Like maybe you know why? Like why don't you understand from being physically uncircumcised that yeah, and it also means even if you're philosophically uncircumcised. No, that's not the case because maybe the reason that a physically uncircumcised person is forbidden to do the avodah or disqualifies the avodah is because it's gross, right? It's like it is something that God finds unattractive physically. But a person who's a fine physical specimen and he's physically circumcised, he looks great, but inside, in his heart, he's not from. He doesn't believe in God. Amolo, maybe I would say no. But maybe that's okay. Like maybe so if the criteria is physically uncircumcised, I might think it's a physical aspect, right? It doesn't matter what your philosophically what you look like. V'yashmin Arelev. And what if it only said, Arelev, someone who's philosophically estranged? Mishum de'em li b'al. Yeah, you know why? Because it makes sense. Don't do the avoda if you don't believe, right? Aval arel basar to leave al. But what about a from person who, through no fault of his own, is physically uncircumcised? I would say maybe it's okay. So it has to tell you both that it's both the physical aspect and the philosophical aspect of being estranged from God that disqualify the avodah. Okay, Tameh Pasul. So a korban that the avodah was done by a Tameh is also possible. Now, Amr Nedarim, the Chachamim in the south said as follows. Lo shanu t'mei sheretz. What are we talking about? A kohen who's tamei because he touched the sheretz. Tamei Mace, but if he touched a dead body, which is, of course, a more serious form of Tuma, Mitoch Shemaratza B'tzibur, since that can be allowed for a carbon tzibur, Maratza Nam B'yachid, that can also work for a carbon yachid. Okay, so it's a little paradoxical. Even though the tuma is a worse kind of tuma, a more severe kind of tuma, maybe it's not included by the Mishnah. Maybe the Mishnah only disqualifies a kohen who's a tamei sheretz.
Well, you could think of a maiden mitzvah. Even a Kohen is obligated, right?
Exactly, right.
Or
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 the
or
typical,
a Egla Arufa, maybe.
right, but that doesn't tell you that he can do the avoda. Right? Maybe a Kohen who's Tommy from Mace Mitzvah cannot actually do the avoda. He has to get a replacement. But typically, what we think of is Tuma Hutra B'tzibur, that if most of the people are Tame, then a carbon tzibur can still be brought. And it
Right.
often comes up in the context of carbon Pesach.
Pesach.
Right. One of the issues is, well, aren't all the Kohanim Tame? Isn't everybody Tame? How are you supposed to bring carbon Pesach? The answer is everybody's Tame. So you could bring from that perspective. You could bring a carbon Pesach. Okay, so the Gemara says, wait a minute, Ihache tmei sheretz name, leise b'kabel chomer mitmei meis. If you're going to say that a Kohen who's tmei meis can do the avoda, right? Then you would say kabel chomer, a Kohen that is only tame from a sheretz should also be able to do the avoda, because matmei meis shaton hazah shlishi ushvi. Like, obviously, a tmei meis is more serious than tmei sheretz because it takes a 7-day process. You need the paraduma, you need to be sprinkled on the 3rd day and the 7th day. So maratza, so if he can do the avodah, tmei sheretz shein otan hazah yom ushvi, someone who's tame from a sheretz who doesn't need this elaborate ritual, he just has to go to the mikvah. He doesn't need this more elaborate ritual to become tahar. And adin shemarasa. So certainly that's not such a severe tuma. He should also be allowed to do the avodah. So the Gemara says kasavre ziknei daram. They hold mechaprin kemiskaprin, um, that that the ones who do the kapara, i.e., the kohanim, are on the same are linked to the people who are getting kapara by the carbon. In other words, the tzibur. Mami's kaprin tmei mesin tmei sheretz lo. When does it apply? This idea of tuma hutru tzibur only applies to tumas meis, right? But if the majority of the people are tmei sheretz, right, that doesn't give you license to do the avoda betuma. So afmachaperin tmei mesin tmei sheretz lo. So same would apply for the kohanim. You can't make that kal v'chomer because just as the tuma hutra b'tzibur rule only applies to tumas meis, so too the who can do the avoda betuma also applies only to tumas meis and not tumas sheretz. Okay, Micah Sabre. So what about an individual who has tmei sheretz? What do they hold about him? 1 second. So now we appear to be asking about the Pesach, right? We mentioned before the carbon Pesach. So what about a person who is Tame from a sheretz? He goes to the mikvah, and it's Erev Pesach, and at night, so he's done everything he needs to do. He just has to wait until nightfall, right? Can he bring the carbon Pesach? Now, the carbon Pesach has to be brought while it's still daytime in the afternoon. So he's been to the mikvah, but the clock hasn't run out yet on his tuma. He's still a tful yom. So what do they hold about that? Ikasavre, and what if it's a tmei sheretz? So ikasavre shochim b'zarkin al tmei sheretz. If they hold that it's okay for such a person to have his carbon brought for him, amaylo avdei tzibur betuma, then hakol shebiyachad nichad tzibur avdei betuma, right? So if you're saying you're not gonna link the person to the Kohen, right? The person can still be Tommy, but the Kohen can do the avoda for him. Amaylo avdei tzibur betuma. So why? So then you would say the same thing if the whole tzibur was Tamei Sheretz, right?
What are you saying? He
Right?
would be allowed? Say that. What's the question?
So why? So we're making the statement the person who's a Tvul Yom from being Tmei Sheretz, right?
Right.
Somebody can do the avoda, the can bring his carbon pasach, right? He doesn't have to be physically involved in bringing the carbon pasach. He can be part of a group, right? Or he can even be a solo person, but somebody else does the avoda with the carbon pasach, and that's okay. Well, if that's okay, it's also okay for the tzibur, right? But we're saying not. Ela Kasa, right? So they have to say Shashoctim V'Zarkin Al Tmei Sheretz, that you can do the avoda for the Tmei Sheretz, who is a Tzvul Yom. You can do the avoda for him.
So
Uh,
you're saying you cannot do it for a tzibor that's a tame? I thought we can.
well, we're distinguishing between Tmei Sheretz and Tmei Mace. We know that it's for Tmei Mace you can do that, but not necessarily for Tmei Sheretz. Right? So we said about the Ziknei Daram, or we said in general, you would have to say that um, no, that the Ziknei Daram say that it also applies to that it doesn't apply to its Meisharis. In other words, the paradox is that even though a Tmei Mace is a more serious form of Tuma, nonetheless, um, if um,
So they can
that
do it hutra but tzibor the
you
tame
can
make,
Tzibur,
but not
but
but
Tmei
not
Sheretz
the tame sheretz.
not Tmei Sheretz. Yeah, Tmei Sheretz is not the Trumpet Tzibur. So now Reish Lakish Ula is going to say, "Wait, I've got you in a paradox, in a contradiction here." Takul Reish Lakish Dramai. Reish Lakish, he yelled about it, right? V'chieza koach meruba, which is, um, which is the like more associated with the korban. Koch mechaperin or koch miskaperin? Is it the power of the kohanim who affect the kapara, or the miskaperin, or the owners of the korban? Heavy or koch miskaperin? You'd say like the you'd have to say that the relevance of the status of the owner uh, is more has a stronger effect than the relevance of the status of the Kohen. Because if the owner of the carbon Pesach is Tami from a sheretz, he can still do the carbon Pesach. Uh, but didn't you just say Ziknei Daram that if the Kohen is Tami from a sheretz, it's no good, right? Umabim kom shenit mubalim b'sheretz. So if the owners are Tamei sheretz, mishalchin korban they can participate in the korban, they can send the korban to the mikdash. Kohen shenitma b'sheretz eino maratza. Um, uh, a Kohen who is Tamei Sheretz can't do the avoda. Makom shenitmu balim b'meis. So if what about when you come to Tamei Mace, right? If the owners are Tamei Mace, Shein Mishalchin Korban Asayan, then they can't even participate. They can't even send their Korban Pesach to have the avoda done with it. Kohen shenit b'meis and din shein marasa. So certainly a Kohen who is Tamei Mace. But you said that though it's a paradox really. Didn't you say that that if the Kohen is Tmei Mace, he can actually do the avoda? Um,
But isn't that only if the entire the kahal is tame mate?
no, because they're saying that since there is a case um, where the um, the Kohen can effectively do the avoda when he's tamei meis, like in the case of tum tzibur. Therefore, it doesn't invalidate it in other cases as well, right? Where it's not tum tzibur. Now, you're not supposed to, okay, but we're talking about doesn't invalidate it, right? So they're saying that if there is a case where the avoda is not invalidated, then it should apply more generally. That's
So if
not
he's the only one in the entire community that's tame mate, he could still do avoda.
right, not supposed to, but it would still be valid. So the answer is kasavri ziknei durum tamei meis nami mishalech korbanosov. Yeah, they actually hold that an individual person who is tamei meis, he can send his korban and somebody and for the kohanim to do, as long as he's not participating directly with his hands. Vaksiv, but doesn't say ishish ki yetamei lenefesh, etc. Vyasa pasach b'chodesh hasheni.
You got
Then we
Pesach
have
Sheni.
yes, don't you
Those
have
are the
Pesach
people. The
Sheni?
people are
Exactly.
Rachok and the people are
Right.
Tamei Nefesh.
Right. So these are individuals and they're tame and they can't do the Pesach, right? Um, so lemitzvah. No, so that the Gemara says, you know what? If they had done the Pesach while they were tame, according to the Ziknei Darom, it would have been okay, right? That would not have been a problem. They shouldn't have, but lemitzvah. But what is their first? Like, what is the lachatchila? What should they have done? What should they do? They should wait for Pesach Sheni, but it doesn't mean that if they actually did Pesach Rishon, even if they were tame, it would still work. Roxy, but the Gemara affects ish. Um, Ish lefi achlo. That about the carbon pasach, it says ish lefi achlo tachos v'alaseh. Like when you join in a group for the carbon pasach, it's you know you have to have if you have 20 portions of carbon pesach in a cow, then 20 people can participate. But it links the participating in the carbon to being able to eat the carbon, uh, and you so a tmei mace it turns out cannot eat from that carbon. So again, the Gemara says limits that tells you that the really you should only do a carbon pesach if you can eat from it. But in other words, if you're not tamei, but even if you did, then the carbon pesach itself is still valid.
Still valid.
Um, okay.
Still valid for offering the Korban Pesach. It's valid. He gets credit for offering the Korban Pesach.
Yeah,
That's what it
or
says.
you could say, what if he's part of a group? Like if one person in the group is tamei,
Right.
is it still valid for the other people in the group, even if the Tommy person didn't touch anything, but he's part of the group? Does that invalidate the Korban Pesach? So the answer is, where we're up to now, it's like you shouldn't do it that way. But if you did, the other people, the Korban Pesach is still valid.
And so that is the halacha that a Tamei cannot eat from the Korban Pesach.
I think that is true. Yeah. So
Orel
that
lo. Oh, it says
individual,
Orel lo lo ochel no tishbru. What's it about it?
um,
The in the Chumash it
lo tachlu mimenu,
lo tochlumim. Orel lo tochlumim. Is that what it says? Lo tochlumim.
um, I don't remember the phrase exactly, but tame is included in that. Yeah.
Tell me then.
Yeah.
So he cannot eat from the Korban Pesach,
Right.
and he cannot. He has to wait 7 days. The 3 days.
Right. Right.
So he cannot. By the time he could eat from it, Pesach
Too
is over,
late.
finished.
Yes, exactly.
So is that a positive mitzvah? He's not allowed to, but is there a positive mitzvah to eat the Korban Pesach?
Yes, but that's a separate thing from is the carbon passoc valid, let's say, for the other
No, I
people.
understand that. So in this
There's
case, if
certainly a
he's
valid, yeah,
what?
certainly. Yes, certainly there's a positive mitzvah to eat from carbon passoc. So, okay, so this person doesn't eat from the carbon passoc, that's his bad. That's
But
his,
so does he? Is he? Would he? Sure. So it doesn't invalidate the Korban Pesach. He participates, part of the group. But then is he obligated or is he permitted, perhaps, to
yeah.
bring Korban Pesach on Pesach Sheni because he could not
That's
eat
the
from it
question.
on Pesach Rishon?
Yeah, great question. I would think yes, because he still has a mitzvah to eat from the carbon passoc and he didn't do it. So I would think yes, but on the other hand, like maybe he participated in the carbon pasach by being part of the group. Maybe that's not a situation um, where you bring a pasach sheni. I don't know. Good question.
If, for instance, person does not have to drink the wine from Kiddush to be Yotzi. Here's
Right,
Kiddush, doesn't have to drink it.
right.
So in this
But
case,
but
is
that's
he
not
Yotzi?
similar. No, in the case of carbon pasach, you actually do have to eat the carbon pasach. So you can't be yosei with somebody. I don't think you can be yosei with somebody else eating your carbon pasach. I don't think that's the case.
But it's a mitzvah he just didn't fulfill. So, but does he
Right.
still have a? Okay, so he didn't
Yeah,
drink the
so it's a good
wine.
question. I don't know. I don't know how to
But
solve the
is there a
question.
chiyuv to eat the korban
Right. So
pesach?
I can see both sides. I
Yeah.
can see both sides. I don't know. Good question. Okay, we'll stop here for today.
When we can next week or on Monday morning?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So, what time? Yeah. So we're going to make it 7 o'clock next week, right? Because Hoshana Rabbah davening is long. It starts at 7:45 or 8 o'clock.
Right.
So we'll do 7 o'clock
All right.
next Monday. Okay, Stan, are you still on?
Yes, I'm still on. I'm still
Great.
on. Hello.
Can I give you a call?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Bye.